Hi, Professor Medina again. Trying to get to where you can see all of us. Okay, so pretty much chapter starts out kind of with a review of like the previous stuff. Talks about how human activity consists of action and reflection, how it's a praxis, and how humans are different from animals and that we can like reflect on stuff. And then it goes on to say about how, like on 126, there's a quote. It says, "The leaders cannot treat the press as mere activists, to be denied the opportunity of reflection, allowed merely as illusion of acting."
So he's saying that the leader has to allow the oppressed to feel involved and to be involved in the revolutionary process, so that he's just not oppressing them while pretending to try to liberate them.
Yeah.
Like, instead of just, like, going out and obeying whatever the leader says to do in order to make a revolution, they have to, like, comprehend what they're doing and reflect on it and, like, go over, like, possible consequences and, like, the pros and cons.
Yeah, so it's pretty much what it is. Like, he has to involve the people in the revolution. He can't just go out and say, "This is what we're gonna do. All you'll have to support me." So yeah. And then it talks about how the press, they can't be led in ambiguity. They have to really know what they're doing, and it has to be like their own will. Like a lot of revolutions, like the leaders just like, oh, and they like keep everything. They don't like explain everything the full extent. They don't want people knowing all the information. Like they want them. Like Fear says later, on page 133, it's like the absolutizing of ignorance, and he talks about how the oppressed, he wants them to stay ignorant, like the dominator or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want them to know everything, because then that will like threaten his
superiority,
yeah.
or what he feels that he's superior to them. Because for them to fully comprehend, then that means they have their actual purpose in the society, and their whole purpose in society is solid, so that they feel human. They're not just objects anymore. And then they feel that power that comes with being human. And so that threatens what he feels is his power over them.
Yeah. And then it talks about how critical reflection is also action. It's on page 128. And it's pretty much like how we can't just like, oh, we gotta act, we gotta do it now, and like we can't just be thinking about stuff. Like when you're actually like critically reflecting on stuff, it is action.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want like just like run out and do something because you think it has to be done. You want to really make sure it's the right thing, and you want to make sure the people are ready, that you're not pushing it on people when they're not ready.
Like what were you saying earlier about the Constitution, and if we have like a whim, we just want.
Oh yeah, because like the Constitution, it has all the checks and balances, and it has to where like so many different procedures have to go through before you can actually pass legislation, and that's so like it gives the people more time to like critically reflect and critically think, and like, is this really what I want, or is this just like, oh, this is like what everyone's talking about and this has to be done now? And sometimes it's not always the best thing, so it's got those checks and balances to make sure that it really is the right thing, it's what everyone needs and wants.
Right, so we're not rushing into something headlong, and it doesn't end up as a rash thing that we shouldn't have done, and it's a mistake, especially in such a large scale when it involves so many people. So it's almost like the founding fathers knew about reflection and action and all that stuff. So
and then he talks about how the revolution is not made by the leaders for the people, or the people for the leaders. They both have to like work together in unity, like together, and you can't separate it. And then it talks about how the majorities, they have to be allowed to participate in history as subjects, or else when they're denied that right, then that's when they become dominated and alienated. It's on page 130. So we were talking earlier about, like, well, I don't know if it's relevant. What were you saying about the?
I was saying that in our history class we learned that a lot of the history facts that had to do with minorities such as African Americans or Mexican Americans, and they were involved in wars, or even women, they were involved in wars, and it's downplayed because the history books are written by white men, and they want that superiority, that they want that recognition, and they don't want to share it, and so they overlook it. And so growing up in the society, we read these books, and it shapes who we are because we feel like we have no connection to our history. It was Teddy Roosevelt. He's not a woman and he's not a minority, so how would, why would I feel connected to him besides maybe that we're both American? That's about as far as it goes. But in reality, there were minorities that were in that battle. They just didn't write about it. So it's almost like fair is kind of that's kind of connected in my mind, that without humankind and no history for human beings, there's only history of humanity. And sometimes we forget that because they don't consider, back then they didn't consider African Americans to be human. So
like by excluding them out of history, they deny like the right to be human.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, you weren't important, whatever.
And then they read these books now, and so once again it hits them maybe subconsciously that they're, well, where am I in all of this? So
yeah.
And then that goes back to that video that we watched about that man who wants to take off, what was it, Tom Horn or whatever? He wants to take out the cultural classes. It's disturbing. And it's for this exact reason that we don't get exposed to, the different cultural aspects of our history, so we don't feel connected to it, and then, that's why we're angry or whatever, and then the only way to get past that anger and that oppressed feeling is to find out and learn about it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's taking that away as well. So what's for their people to just get more angry? I don't understand, but...
Do you have any thoughts on that? No? He talks about that for a while, it seems like. He's talking about the different ways of thinking. Like, everyone, like, any kind of leader has to think about their people. They have to, like, strategize and be like, oh, the people feel this way, so I have to do this, or the people need this, or whatever. But the difference between, like, the dominating leader and the revolutionary leader is that the dominating leader thinks about it, offers on purpose. Oh, they feel this way, so I have to do this to keep them under my control. Whereas the revolutionary leaders, like, they feel this way. Okay, so I need to, like, come up with, like, how to help their feelings, or how to, like, actually get down on their level and see what they really want, so that he can really help liberate them and free them. And, like, it says here on page 132, one is the thinking of the master, the other is the thinking of the comrade. So it's, like, important. I mean, like you were saying about the Philippines earlier.
Mm-hmm. In the Philippine War that we were learning about in history class, once again, America originally went to the Philippines saying that we would help and get rid of the Spanish oppressors. And so we did, and we got rid of the Spanish, and the Filipinos were ready to start their own government and be independent. And yet America said, no, wait, we control you now. We're going to take over your bay, and we took over all of their resources and their land, and we used them as a stepping stone to get to China, which was our original plan anyways. We just masked it with, oh, we're going to help you. So it was that false generosity that he was talking about, and we were indeed a dominator instead of a revolutionary leader.
Yeah.
So...
It's sad. And then that was the false generosity again.
Mm-hmm. And they wonder why the natives get angry. Well, why are you wanting to fight against us? because you lied, and it just seems like that it's so obvious to us, and yet so they twist and manipulate their truth so well that to them they don't see anything wrong in what they're doing. They're the oppressor. They feel like that's their right and they deserve to do as they wish.
Yeah.
As Frere explains to us that they truly cannot see, they cannot empathize with the oppressed. They feel that they're so superior to them. So, what does it say? Domination by its very nature requires only a dominant pole and a dominated pole, an antithetical contradiction. So, it's really easy for them to dominate. They just find someone to pick on and they take over.
It's like they're thinking for the people and like without the input from the people. And like on page 131 it says that revolutionary leaders, they cannot think without the people nor for the people but only with the people.
Yeah.
So like that's the difference between them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is a major difference. It's like you have to remember, like, you're at the same level as the people, even though you're organizing them. You still have to remember that their thoughts. It's not your thoughts. It's not your own purpose and intentions. It's their thoughts
Right.
and what they want. You have to help them because a lot of times they don't realize what they want. You can't push that on them. If you see they need something, you can't push it on them. You have to pose it to them as a problem, help them to see that that's what they need, and then help them think with them.
Right. They have to come to the understanding and their own realization. Because if you just push it on them, it's just that banking concept again. You're just filling them with this information. They're not actually comprehending and creating their own ideas and thoughts. They're just mimicking what you're doing.
Yeah.
So when the moment comes, they're not going to feel anything because they didn't do anything. It was all the leader. And so the leader's the one that gets the glory.
And they're still being oppressed.
Yes. And they're back to square one. And also, you would think that it would help if they knew the exact purpose that they're fighting for, because when you're in a revolutionary kind of time, it's there's going to be consequences, and some of these consequences can be rather harsh. So when they get put in jail or something, they're gonna wait. Why am I even doing this? And their resolve just kind of.
It's like with the Vietnam War and the Iraqi War. A lot of the people that went over there, they're like, "Why are we fighting? This isn't my choice." They're like, "I don't agree with this cause, but I'm being forced to fight." And then that was like completely dominating. Like, where was like asking the people what they wanted? Like, there was none of that. These people are over there giving their lives for a cause that they don't believe in, or they don't even know what they're fighting for.
Right.
And that's like completely dominating leadership.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if it was truly revolutionary, they would have asked the Vietnamese. They're like, "Hey," or they would have like observed them, see their themes, what they think is important, and be like, "What do you want us to do?" And ask the American people, "What should we do?"
They did the action without the reflection.
Yeah.
So it came off as a mistake for pretty much everyone involved. Understood.
And then Barry goes on to talk about the different things that are used by the anti-dialogical action. He talks about conquest, but here he starts to sound like really socialist. Like in the beginning of the book, it sounded like he was different from like other socialists, but he starts talking about like the myth of private property is fundamental to personal human development. It's on page 140. And so it's like making it sound like he's completely anti-capitalist. And I don't know, like personally, I think that capitalism is important because it rewards people for their hard work. Like, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of inequities, and that does need to be dealt with and worked with. I mean, we can't ignore that. That's what's wrong with our society. So often we're like you were saying earlier, we can't just be like, oh, you have equal opportunity, like, it's America. But we have to realize we're not perfect. We have to work on this. But it doesn't mean we completely change our whole ways of society. Like, we have to deal with our problems. We have to face our problems. We can't deny them.
Right. So I mean, we have a good foundation. Our government obviously the founding fathers had something right. I mean,
Yeah.
they wrote it so that there's time in between things, and